Um, if you're still a little bit intimidated about how to even begin this first initial shape, something I was doing while the recording was downloading was if you're looking in the mirror too, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how wide do I make this kind of skull versus the height? You can. I always like to kind of close one eye when I do this, but you can take either a ruler or your pencil. And I don't really measure from the ears. I'm trying to measure just the width, like the width of my skull. I kind of take it right above the eyes, or right at the eye line, and I can kind of take the end of the ruler, take my thumb, and find the width visually, and you can compare it by going from the bottom of your chin, where my thumb is, it's about 1.5. So if you're trying to have a hard time making that first initial oval, you can use your pencil or your ruler and still do our measuring technique on your own face. And so I'm just using this pencil, and I'm using my thumb here to find how wide it is. And I'm lining it up. My thumb basically sits right between my eyebrows. So it's about 1.5 is kind of like the width to the height. Obviously, it's a little different for everybody, but it might be kind of helpful for you to just, once again, hold your arm out and find. It's kind of tough with the mirror, so I try not to have any kind of reflection. I don't hold it down here. I try to hold it so I'm not really seeing a whole bunch of the reflection of the pencil. I try to hold it straight in front, and then you can compare how tall. So if you're having trouble making that initial shape, you can still take your pencil and kind of see, like where does like the bottom corner of my chin, does it have an angle with my ear kind of a thing? What are the angles from like the chin to the ear, which we're going to be going into in more detail Thursday. But if you're having trouble with that initial shape, definitely find the width and compare it to the height, just like we do with our still life objects. That still holds true. It's just you got to kind of get used to looking at it in the mirror and kind of sitting back and being able to look at where your thumb is sitting on your pencil or your ruler and how it sits when you compare it to the height. So still the same basic process. You just have to kind of get used to measuring using the mirror, because sometimes the reflections can get a little tricky. You just have to really be able to kind of sit there and see kind of where you place your thumb. Like I said, I always close one eye, and I'm placing my thumb for the width. And you can even go this way if you want. So if I hold it up from my chin, yeah, it's just right kind of between the eyebrows, and then there's about halfway up to get the end of the top of the skull here. So just remember to double check that. You can always go back to that basic measuring technique just to double check if something is twice as wide as something else, if something has a kind of narrow angle with other things. So we're really going to be using that basic technique quite a bit, especially when we start figuring out the widths of all of these different features. In the 3/4 view, it's very similar. So you can close one eye, and I'm taking my thumb here, and I'm measuring all the way to that kind of back contour of the skull here, and having this end line up with the other side of my face. And it's kind of tricky. You gotta like hold it right, because sometimes it's like you're tilting down. You gotta make sure you hold it straight as possible. And I'm finding the width with my thumb, and then in the 3/4 view, This one's a little trickier because that skull, yeah, it's 3/4 of the height. So it's pretty. If I was thinking about this basic shape here, um, the length of the skull in the background. So it needs to be a little bit wider actually for my initial drawing. Um, if it's 2/3 the height. So when you're making this basic shape, you can kind of compare, oh, so the length from here to here is 3/4, pretty much the length from here to here. That can kind of give you a nice kind of blueprint, because then it kind of will help you to make this basic contour here, knowing that in the 3/4 view, like this width here is really quite wide compared to the height. So I'm just kind of lengthening it out a little bit. I'm going to erase some of my lines I don't need. And then we can kind of go in and, once again, we placed our eye line in there, which is really helpful, because then we can start to talk about kind of our eyes a little bit, where to place them. So for me, that eye line pretty much sets up the whole rest of the drawing. So being able to see an accurate placement for your two eyes pretty much sets everything else up. So if we're looking at the 3/4 view, you'll see that your nose kind of comes forward, and really it's very little width between the nose and the cheek there. Now your two eyes, you're obviously seeing more of this eye than this eye. So typically what I like to do is, at the eye line, essentially I'm just going to put in a basic kind of oval at the eye line on this side. And then for this one, it's also in line. I'm going to look at, where does that eye kind of sit in the whole scheme of this shape here. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because if you were to take a vertical line and just cut it straight in half, your eye, essentially, the end of this eye meets right at that kind of the point where that line intersects. So I'm just going to look at my basic shape, and I'm just going to cut it in half with another vertical line. Hopefully it's straight. Not quite. There we go. So I'm taking that really wide part of that skull into account too, where that vertical line sits. It's just cutting this basic shape straight in half. So I'm counting like from here to here. You're cutting that in half from this here to this side, just a line that cuts straight in half, and the outside of your eye basically meets up where your eye line and that vertical line meet. So I'm just gonna put in a basic oval here, make it a little bit longer than this one. So we're starting to set up kind of the smaller side of the face versus the larger side. So you can see the end of my eye really does meet up where that vertical line and our eye line, they kind of meet in that central point. And that really sets up the outside of that eye there. Now this is where we can start to put in the nose. And one thing is just that you want to make sure that the tip of your nose here comes across, so that the tip of this nose, if you were to take a vertical, it kind of cuts your eye. It overlaps just a touch, so it kind of, this vertical starts to cut through your eye on the one side. So sometimes I like to put a little line through that eye a little bit. And you can see that now this kind of nose has this angle. You could even take your ruler and kind of find that angle. once again, you kind of can close an eye and kind of like find this angle with the ruler and kind of approximate that angle. Don't forget, the bottom of the nose kind of cuts halfway, for me anyway. It's sort of like that halfway point between the eyes and the chin. So I'm going to quickly just put in that and yeah, so now I'm going to kind of just make this, I need to be a little bit lower. And that's where the bottom point of my nose kind of goes out and it curves back in. And it kind of lines up. The bottom of my nose sort of lines up with the edge of the eye here. So I'm going to kind of just make a really kind of basic shape for the nose here. So I know I have a nostril out there somewhere, so I'm just going to kind of indicate where that nostril might be. The edge of the nose here kind of lines up with the, so with this edge of my nostril, once again, take a vertical. You'll be doing a lot of verticals and horizontals. The edge of this nostril lines up with the inside of this eye here, which is really nice to have because you can start to build up that kind of triangular relationship between your nose and your eyes. So whereas on the frontal portrait, we've got basically a really kind of tall triangle here that starts to set up with the base of the nose. With the 3/4, it's kind of more of an isosceles triangle. And then once again, our mouth, a basic guideline would be halfway between our nose and our chin. So I'm going to lay down that line as well to give me a basic line for my mouth. So a lot of this beginning these portraits, you'll be doing a lot of these kind of vertical and horizontal guidelines. Because then once you lay those in, that's when you can really start to elongate something. Maybe the space between your top lip and your nose is kind of small, so we can kind of start to adjust that. But you can see I'm starting to just make some basic measurements here to start to block in some of those features. So we're not really getting into the fine contours of the eyes yet. You're just blocking in some basic ovals, some basic triangles for the shape of the nose. And you're really just taking this time to measure the distances of your face. So this is pretty basic. I've kind of tailored it to my face at this point, but each one is going to be slightly different. However, everyone should be using kind of these basic guidelines, cutting things in half, finding space, like where to put the mouth, at least put in the guideline. Maybe your mouth is a little bit higher up or a little bit lower up, but really start by trying to get some accurate measurements with these basic shapes. And with the 3/4 view, it's just really important that you make sure that one side of the face is very much smaller and narrower than the other. So we're going to put in a basic shape for the mouth on the 3/4. We're going to place that mouth in there. And so at this point, one thing to just be aware of is that your features, we're going to put in like a basic rectangle here, but I'm going to make it so that it's maybe sort of more of an ellipse, because I kind of want to follow the bottom lip a little bit. I kind of want to indicate how high the lips come up towards my nose. So we've got kind of that guideline that's halfway between. But I noticed that for me on my face, like I've got like a distinct amount of like this space here, and I've got quite a bit there. So I'm gonna just make sure that I'm conscious of the fact that I might have to lengthen my contour here just a little bit to fit everything. Now, with this basic shape, you can start to take your ruler and start to find the vertical, like where, if you were to take a vertical straight up, what lines up, or what does the outside corner of your mouth line up with? Like what part of this eye? Or is it further out than this nostril of the nose? Or are they really close? For me, it doesn't line up with the nose. If you were to take a vertical, it kind of cuts right through the middle of the eye. So I'm just going to kind of make a vertical right through that eye and kind of line it up the outside of my mouth with that guideline there. And that's when I can start to make this kind of oval shape. The other corner I want to look at is, where does this corner vertically line up? It basically lines up pretty close to through the middle of my other eye. So I make a vertical through that eye, and I can kind of now start to make this ellipse. As you can see, the lips, they really curve up in the middle. The bottom lip really does come down from that, that central line. So I'm kind of making a simple kind of ellipse shape. It might be too big. I probably have to adjust that. I made it quite large, but so you can see I've made those verticals from the middle of my eyes going straight down. And it helps me to really place that mouth. That one side of the mouth is going to be a bit shorter than the other. See how the left side of that mouth really kind of comes across the face and lines up with that eye near the middle. So once again, this doesn't look like me, but it's going to really set me up now that I can go in and kind of start to refine some things. The first one being, I can tell that I need to kind of push this contour a little bit further out. And like this cheekbone starts to show up there, so I can kind of follow that, make that interesting cheekbone shape with where my eye sits. And then actually, because I have the shape of the eye there, I can really kind of make the brow this like little point here. And then start to go up. So I've kind of refined my contour on one side. And last thing I want to do with the 3/4 view is kind of indicate where my ear, that kind of large, like the ear on the one side, and then the placement of where your neck would be. So once again, with the ear, if you were to take horizontals across, the bottom of the ear lines up pretty closely with the bottom of the nose here. Not exactly, but pretty close on me. And then the top here pretty much lines up right above that eye. So once again, you can just kind of making another set of horizontals. It sort of kind of places your ear. It makes a nice placement for the ear. The one thing to keep in mind is that there is this kind of jaw line here, very much in line with the mouth. So that I indicate where the jaw is, I can kind of place where my ear might be. To get this kind of point here with the ear, you may want to find an angle with the end of your eye. And if the angle is too acute or too obtuse, you just kind of got to move. You'll just have to move kind of your contour here, kind of move it in if it's like too long out here. If it's too close, you're going to have to kind of push this ear further out. And I'm now just going to kind of place the ear shape in between those two horizontals I made with the eyes and the nose. So I've sort of placed it right in between that horizontal I made with my nose and the horizontal I made with my eyes. Where my jaw sits, notice how it lines up kind of with the horizontal of the mouth. And so this is just really, really basic. Now I can go in and kind of start to now really investigate the contours of each feature on that three-quarter view. So with both of these basic outlines, we can begin to build kind of the more subtle, sensitive placements of all of our features within kind of these frameworks here. So this is really kind of like the 101 of portrait drawing, is just getting these kind of these placements correct. Notice how many horizontals and verticals I have on both of these drawings. I'm constantly saying, oh, okay, the bottom of my nose, what does it line up with? The edges of my mouth. If I take a vertical from those edges, where does it intersect the eyes? You know, how far to one side is my nose from the corner of the mouth? You know, you can find some diagonals between those. Like finding, you know, kind of how does the nostril and the corner of the mouth, what angle is made there? You know, like I did here with the ear and the eye. So for the beginning, it's really important that we have a really good, lightly drawn blueprint. That's why I was using the H pencil. Because then Thursday, we're going to really talk about majorly kind of how to draw the nostrils, how to draw the eyes naturally, because a lot of beginning drawers or draftspersons, when they draw eyes, they just make a pretty basic oval with like sharp corners at the ends, and they draw a circle for the iris, and then a smaller circle for the pupil. But that's not that's not natural at all, really, because when you start to think about your features, things like your eye, like this is where it's actually kind of helpful as you're drawing to kind of close your eyes and just kind of feel the three-dimensional nature of the face, because you'll realize that your eye is actually a sphere held within the skin and inside the socket of the bone. It's actually a very spherical object. That's why it's called an eyeball, obviously. And that your skin really wraps around the eye. So it's not like this flat oval. It's actually, when you look at the way that your skin and eyelashes fold over at the edges, you really see where the skin kind of comes down and goes into your tear duct, how it kind of curves over and kind of ends at the end there. You see how kind of this curves down and around it. A lot of it actually overlaps a lot of your eye. If you take a really close look, you'll see that the skin actually goes back, curves over, and then kind of curves back toward the end of the eye socket. So you're really kind of thinking about how does, like, if you were to take like a blanket, like how does that, if you were to put it over like a beach ball or any kind of like dodgeball, like how does that blanket curve around that? You know, if you were to like overlap it a bit over the ball there, you're drawing a very similar interaction. It's not like this flat shape. It's a three-dimensional sphere that's kind of covered and overlapped by the opening in your eye. And then you have to keep in mind too that where your eyes meet at the ends, your tear duct is like this really interesting little minor feature in there that you do have to really look at the shape of it. It's not just some like, you know, rounded into your eye. It has its own little intricacies with the skin of your eyelids. The nose, for example, and we're kind of talking more about planes here. Your nose actually has like a very prominent kind of plane right in the front, and then it meets the plane that goes back. So you've got like this bridge of the nose, this, not bridge, you can kind of feel it where this plane comes down and the plane from the bottom, they meet each other. That creates kind of like the front edge. And then it, almost like a cube, has these edges where it goes back and meets the nostril. So they're not just these flat shapes. You can't really assume anything about your features, because once we start on Thursday, like breaking down the planes of it, once you start breaking down into like these simple, like cubular spherical shapes, you start to see how many different facets the features have. And as we were going through our shading project, you know, the more facets it has, the more values it has, the more you have to be a little more sensitive about the values. So your nose has got like that really prominent kind of front part where it kind of goes back. And then the nostrils, of course, are these rounded, curved shapes that kind of flare out and then go back and meet your cheekbones. You're kind of where the beginning of your teeth and all that kind of hits. So kind of they fold back and then curve in and meet this very kind of the distinct divot of the back of your nostril. So sometimes it's helpful before we start really getting into the features, it may be helpful just to take like 10 minutes just kind of looking at, you know, the different, try to break down your features into the same facets that we kind of broke down like fruit with. If you start thinking about your features as just like these planes and these curved edges, that's really going to help you in terms of that when we go to shade them later on. Because the one thing that I'll say about drawing the features on these portraits is that each feature has 3 dimensions to it. So you just can't assume that your eyes, like the pupil, is just a circle. Because if you look at it, if you look at your eyes in the mirror, the top of your eyelid and the bottom of your eyelid, they overlap the top and bottom of your iris that's sitting there. It's not a full circle. I mean, if you were to open your eyes wide, you know, it's much closer, but you see how the openings of your eyes, they overlap and cut into the circle of your iris. So you can't just kind of stamp a circle in there and expect that to look natural, because that's what we're going for, is naturalistic portrait drawing. So, but before we even get to that point, we need to have an accurate map of our faces. So it's really important to lay down kind of these basic measurements, because then on Thursday we're really going to get into, like I just talked about, breaking things down into planes and organic natural shapes. That's kind of the next phase of these 2 drawings. So on Thursday, I'm going to do both. We're going to do the frontal portrait. We're going to go over eyes, nose, mouth, and then our 2 ears. And yes, I will be adjusting kind of the contour of my jaw and my chin. And we're really going to get these facial features. And we can also kind of quickly cover like the hairline. Like obviously mine's going to be different than a lot of yours. But it's really important to also begin to cite and measure where these shapes of the hair, where they sit in comparison to, you know, your eye. You know, where does my part start? If we were to take a vertical down, like where does that begin? So we're going to have a really informative and instructional demo on Thursday, because I'm also going to talk about the shapes of the features on the 3/4 view. So homework basically tonight and tomorrow for you guys is to come to class Thursday with some blueprints of your face. So like I said, the measurements that I was making, they're going to be different for each of us. So if you're looking at between your nose and your chin, maybe your mouth doesn't quite sit there. Maybe your chin does not reach as far down as mine does. Maybe it's a little bit shorter. Maybe it comes up a little bit. Maybe your ears are a little smaller. So by Thursday, I want everyone to have some basic frontal and three-quarter schematics, basically is what they are. Because then Thursday, we're going to go in and with a darker kind of lead, like really lay in the contours. Because then once we lay in the contours, next week we can start to shade them. I'm going to be using this lamp again, so I'm going to have very distinct kind of light side, shadow side. And we'll be able to spend all of next week just shading our two line drawings. So just like with the hallway, there's kind of a line drawing phase to this, and then a shading phase to this. Now, on the syllabus, depending on kind of how we do by Tuesday, I may adjust the assignment for that Saturday. So there's nothing due this Saturday, I don't think. I'll recheck the syllabus. But right now, we're just building our drawings, just measuring, just sighting and measuring your face. So take some time, kind of get used to holding a pencil or ruler and finding like the width, finding certain angles, like between the angles between outside of my eye and my nose. So really take some time to kind of measure these out properly, because then once you've kind of got your features in the right placement, we get to have a lot more fun rendering them naturally. So that's what we're going to do on Thursday. Does anyone have any questions so far about like phase one, the intro, measuring, all that stuff? Okay. In that case, the first phase is finished. Thursday, I really want to start like right at 10 o'clock, hopefully. I'll send out the link a bit earlier so that we can really get started like at 10 and really get into drawing the features. So at this point, like I said, today, tonight, tomorrow night, even Thursday morning if you have to, really use a light pencil lead to start to build those line drawings. Seeing where to put your features. So we'll cover, we'll have to cover some more of that on Thursday before we start drawing everything. But yeah, so at this point, it's pretty simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So really take that time to really sight and measure using a light lead. You want these to be really light so that you can use a slightly darker lead on Thursday, like 2B. And we'll use a 2B kind of lead to start to darken in these proper shapes. Also, the weather is really nice outside, and I can't believe it, honestly. But does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Well, this meeting is going to end pretty soon anyway. I keep watching the clocks counting down. But be ready. So I really want us to start at 10 Thursday and just really get into it. We may go, I can't really say how long the demo is going to be on Thursday, but we're going to really lay down some really important groundwork on Thursday. So just be prepared and have your cite and measured sketches ready to go so that we can start to fill it in. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to be posting links to a couple of videos from just a really good artist. His name is Alfonso Dunn, D-U-N-N, and he just has like a basic, he's got a really good camera setup where it like shows him like measuring out like, oh, this, my eye's here and like my nose there. So don't worry. This second meeting has also been recorded. I'm going to upload them to my YouTube channel. If you want to just re-watch what we did today before Thursday, that's totally fine. I won't have it uploaded, I don't think, until later this evening, though. So don't be like, hounded the YouTube site or my YouTube channel. So other than that, you are all free. I want everyone to have, a decent amount of time to start this. So take a really, thorough look, really investigate the placement of your features using the mirror. Okay. If no one has any questions, I'm going to end the meeting there so I can get some stuff uploaded for you. So, and yeah, if anyone wants a specific point total for their grade so far, just let me know. I'm just adding them all up. Like I said, pretty much everyone is in that 90 to 100 percentile. So yeah, it's kind of up to you what percentage you want to see, but yeah. And if someone's trying to ask a question and I can't hear it, can always email me to let me know. So other than that, I'm going to end the meeting, and I hope everyone can at least get outside for a few minutes. So good luck with that. And don't worry. I mean, this is simple, but it's difficult. So let's just kind of take some time with it, and let's really get these drawings, accurate. All right, I'll see everyone Thursday, and I'm gonna really want to get started like at 10 so we can get as much as possible going, okay?
Bye.
All right, good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
And Gabrielle, yes, you will have more points.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was just...
Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot, I forgot I had a dentist appointment, that I needed to do right before work. So, I sent it, and then I forgot to send that. I took a picture of it because how would I erase all that?
Yeah.